The savanna was holding its breath, and somewhere beneath the unbroken sun, a tiny life was running out of time. The grass stood still, the heat pressed down, and no answer came to cry drifting across the plains. What happened next would be remembered by the land long after the sound had faded. A young black panther cub burst from its cover, its small body cutting a dark line through the gold. It ran without direction, without strategy, guided only by the raw command to survive. Each breath scraped its chest, shallow and fast, its legs trembling as they carried it farther than they ever had before. Fear drove it forward, louder than instinct, louder than hunger, louder than the absence it could not understand. Behind it came the sounds that turned panic into desperation. Shapes moved through the grass, low and relentless, their shadows stretching longer with every bound. The cub's paws struck the ground hard, kicking up dry dust that clung to its fur and burned its eyes. Its world narrowed to the space directly ahead, where a lone acacia tree stood like a fragile promise. Without slowing, the cub leapt, claws scraping bark until they found purchase. The trunk vibrated beneath its weight as it climbed, muscles burning, heart beating wildly against its ribs. The higher it went, the thinner the branches became. One snapped beneath its shifting body, grazing the side of its neck and sending a sharp sting through its nerves. The cub flinched but did not stop. It climbed until it could go no farther, wedging itself into a narrow fork where the branches trembled under its small frame. Below, the sounds gathered. Shapes circled. The ground felt impossibly distant, a spinning drop that made the cub's head swim when it dared to look down. Its body locked tight with fear, claws sunk deep, chest heaving as the world waited. Time stretched under the sun. The shapes below eventually drifted away, their hunger pulling them elsewhere, but relief did not follow. The cub remained frozen, muscles stiff and aching, the air shimmering with heat. Its mouth open and a thin, rasping cry slipped out, weaker than before. It was not a call of alarm now, but of longing. The sound carried across the open plains, rising and falling in the stillness. No answer came. The sky offered only silence, wide and unfeeling, as the cub's strength slowly ebbed. Above, shadows passed. Broad wings rode invisible currents, circling patiently. Their presence felt more than seen. The cub's paws slipped slightly, then held again, the effort drawing another cry from deep within its chest. Its throat burned, its body sagged against the bark. The tree, once a refuge, had become another test it could not escape. Heat pressed down, heavy and constant, as if the land itself had turned away. Still the cub clung on, driven by something older than fear, something that refused to let go. Across the plains, life continued without pause. Insects hummed. Distant shapes moved through the grass. The cub cried again, the sound thinner now, carried on air that did not seem to care where it landed. It waited, not for rescue it could name, but for the simple hope that the world might notice. The sun burned overhead, and the trees stood silent, holding the small, trembling life between earth and sky. Time passed without mercy. The sun slid higher, then leaned west, bleaching the savanna into a quiet glare. The cub's claws ached, its small muscles trembling with fatigue as the bark bit into its pads. Each breath came shallow and hot, carrying dust and dryness into its lungs. Below, the ground lay distant and spinning, a reminder how far instinct had driven it from safety. The tree creaked softly in the heat. The cub shifted, slipped a fraction, and froze again, heart pounding, strength draining faster than fear, while nightless silence pressed close around it in the clearing below. It was then that the air changed. Heavy footsteps carried the ground, slow and measured, felt before they were seen. A towering shape moved into the clearing, pattern hide, catching light in muted tones. The cub stiffened, a thin hiss escaping its throat in reflexive warning. Yet the newcomer did not rush or retreat. It paused, lowering its long head, dark eyes calm and unblinking. There was no hunger in its posture, no fear, only stillness, patience, and an attention that seemed carefully offered. The savanna itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something unnamed to happen there. The giant stepped closer until its shadow fell across the trunk. With deliberate care, it positioned its powerful neck beneath the branch where the cub clung. The movement was slow, almost ceremonial, as though guided by an instinct older than the plains themselves. The cub watched, ears flattened, eyes darting between open air and solid warmth below. Its claws burned, its chest shuddered with effort. Trust did not come easily. It gathered in a single fragile moment, trembling between the certainty of falling and the unknown promise of support, while the sun watched without judgment over the quiet land below. When the cub finally released its grip, there was no panic left, only surrender. Its small body slid downward, claws catching gently in coarse mane as the giant remained perfectly still. Muscles shifted beneath patterned skin, bracing with quiet strength. The cub's weight was met, not rejected. Breath by breath, it descended, finding balance against a living surface that did not shake or flee. The ground no longer felt distant. It felt reachable. Around them, the plains remained silent, bearing witness to an act that required no understanding to feel true in the vast open afternoon light of the savannah. The giant began to move only once the cub was secure, walking with a careful sway that kept its passengers steady. Each step was measured, respectful of the fragile life it carried. Warmth radiated through thick hide, easing the cub's shaking limbs as exhaustion finally overtook fear. The tree faded behind them, no longer a prison, but a memory. Dust stirred softly around slow hooves. This was not rescue, as the world names it. It was guardianship, wordless and brief, unfolding as naturally as wind across grass under a sky that asked nothing in return from either of them there. When they reached thicker cover, the giant slowed and lowered its body, allowing the cub to slip down into shadow. The contact ended without ceremony, without looking back. The cub disappeared into brush, carrying no lesson it could name, only the steady echo of survival. The giant stood a moment longer, then turned away, melting into distance. The savannah resumed its quiet rhythms. What passed left no mark on the land. Yet something had shifted all the same, an understanding written briefly between lives that would never meet again beneath the open sky of enduring heat and endless plains. The cub was found later that day, curled low in the shade where the grass grew thick and the light softened. Its breathing was shallow but steady, the frantic edge gone, replaced by a fragile stillness that spoke of exhaustion rather than fear. A small mark traced the side of his neck, more a reminder than an injury, and its paws trembled when it tried to rise. Gentle hands moved slowly, careful not to startle, offering water before touch, patience before purpose. The cub accepted what it could, blinking against the unfamiliar closeness, its body yielding to the quiet certainty of care. Time unfolded in small, deliberate steps. Fluids were given in measured sips, nourishment offered without urgency. The cub's coat, dulled by dust and heat, gradually regained its depth, black fur catching hints of light as strength returned. Each day brought a little more movement, a little more curiosity. It tested its legs, then its balance, then the reach of its limbs. Its eyes sharpened, alert again to the spaces between shadows. The land beyond the enclosure breathed its rhythms through the air, and the cub listened, learning once more the language of wind and scent. Those who watched kept their distance when they could, understanding that recovery was not only physical. The cub needed space to remember itself. It practiced its pounce in short bursts, stalked insect through the grass, rested with chin on paws as the sun dipped and rose again. The small mark at its neck faded, skin healing beneath fur. What remained was a steadiness that had not been there before, an awareness shaped by a day when the world had narrowed and then widened again. Nothing was forced. The cub grew because time allowed it to. When the moment came, it was chosen carefully. The land was quiet, the air clear, the path open. The crate door lifted and stayed lifted, not urging, not waiting. The cub stepped out on its own, nose low, ears turning to gather the stories carried on the breeze. It paused, taking the wide space before it, then moved forward with a confidence that did not look back. Grass closed behind it as it slipped away, a shadow among shadows, returned to a place that had always been at home. Seasons shifted. The plains dried and greened again, heat easing into cooler mornings, dusk giving way to brief rains. Life continued as it always does, marked by tracks and calls that appear and vanish without ceremony. Somewhere among the rocks and thickets, a young panther grew into its strength, learning the contours of territory and time. The land did not speak of what had passed, But it did not erase it either. Memory in the wild does not announce itself. It settles, quiet and enduring, woven into movement and choice. Much later, when the sun lowered into a copper sky and shadows lengthened across familiar paths, the plains offered a quiet answer, a moment protection, a presence held at the edge of danger, a space kept safe until help arrived. Nothing dramatic, no spectacle, only a balance restored in the same way it had once been disturbed. The wild does not measure debts in words. It carries them in patterns, in recognition, in the way one life pauses so another may pass. Under the wide African stars, the land returned to its breathing, ancient and unhurried. The cycle continued, unbroken. What had been given was not lost. It moved forward, carried by the quiet fidelity of a place that remembers, answering kindness not with display, but with presence when it matters most.